Well, who's driving me nuts right now is certainly Charlie Morton, and to a certain degree Spencer Strider as well.
Well, Morton is, it's just simply like a little ripple, little.
I don't know. Here's what it seems like he does for that start. For every start that he has, where he gives up no runs or 1 run in 6 innings, he will have 3 others where he gives up 3 and 4 runs in 4 2/3 innings.
Well, my biggest beef with the Braves, and this is something we talked about last week with Carl, and I know, look, you just absolutely beat the snot out of the Rockies. They're just a bad baseball team, and they're the worst team in that division. You beat them like a drum, like you're supposed to, which is, again, that's great. But when you get in the playoffs, you're playing against better pitching.
Yep.
And I think anybody who sits there and says we're going to live in this softball game world, we're going to bomb everybody 10-4, how'd that work against the Phillies last year?
It did not work. The Braves are, by the way, 40 runs, 49 hits in those 4 games.
But to your point, Charlie against the Mets, 4 earned runs, good start against a hapless Tigers team. But again, only going 5 innings. He goes 4 2/3, 5 2/3, 5.
Yep.
You're putting way too much work into the bullpen. You're taxing your bullpen. I know the minor league guys are doing the best they can. Schuster and Dodd are still learning their way, but I think they're going to be okay. But Charlie, to your point, against the Rockies on Sunday, in a classic American League style game, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, still have 8 strikeouts, but just, and the pitch count was already 98 by the 5th inning, which drives me crazy.
Now, Spencer Strider, though, 10 starts this year, and half of those starts, he has given up 4 or more runs.
You pitched in college, and I know that we bring this up every time, so let me just run it by you. And Smoltz has said he didn't need to go to a 3rd pitch, but don't you think the changeup has got to be a bigger part of his repertoire?
I think it should be, yeah. Well, right now, his slider's an issue right now. He has poor command of his slider. Therefore, what can a hitter do? Well, he clearly his slider's not working right now. Right. I can sit fastball.
Sit there dead red.
Yeah. And by the way, Strider's still getting good movement on his fastball. Actually, a little bit more movement. His velocity's down just a tick, but that's not his issue. His issue is the slider. And he has showcased a changeup. He threw it like 3% of the time last year. Combine that with the fact now the entirety of Major League Baseball has the book on him. They've seen him enough now where you can recognize his tendencies. He's got to fix his slider, and I think he should embrace the notion of maybe throwing the changeup a little more often. You could save it till the 7th inning if you're going that far in a game or late in a ball game and then drop that in a high-leverage situation. You'll buckle the knees of a hitter.
It's just frustrating because every game you just see, like some exceptions to the rule, but it seems like you're really putting a lot of work on that bullpen. Now, unless we're going to go and address it at the trade deadline. Look, you can't do anything now. I'm not advocating making trades now because you can't. No one's going to do that now. They're going to wait to get other teams in the mix, and with the expanded playoff format, there's a lot of folks want to get some leverage. Otherwise, there'd be no point. But I just wonder how Alex Anthopoulos is going to pull this one off. You beat the Rockies 8-1, 10-2, 14-6, 8-3 was the first game. So it was beautiful to watch these tape measure home runs. Sure. Muddy Harris is completely out of it. Ever since Ozuna said, "Look, man, you're good enough. People like you. Just go back and be the best center fielder in the major leagues." And
I tell you, Marcell Ozuna, I love the way Carl summed it up a couple of weeks ago. He's helping.
Yes.
That's the way Carl summed it up. I mean, he has been.
We said this a few weeks ago when things looked really, really bleak in April when he couldn't buy a hit.
Right.
You couldn't trade him. And if you cut him, somebody might pick him up, but you're still on the hook. It's like when, years ago when Frank Wren finally said, I got to just get rid of the Uptons and Ugly. You finally get to a moment. In the case here, it was still too cost prohibitive. And there's some of those, not everybody, some Braves fans who just love to get on their high horse when somebody screws up and just like keep riding them and keep riding them. The dude can still serve a major role, and he has, and he is. And if you could told me he was going to have that kind of unbelievable May, now into June. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's a butcher in the outfield. His role is a DH. We got great depth between him and d'Arnaud. We got all sorts of matchups we can get. And this dude is actually earning his pay.
You got Matt Olson putting up Dave Kingman-type numbers, batting .215 with 20 homers.
Did you see the article? It was in Sporting News. And they were talking. It was actually from a year ago, and somebody brought it up again because the same thing was happening. Walks. His on-base percentage is amazing, yet he strikes out more than anybody, and it's the major league hitter. It's launch angle or nothing.
Yeah, strikeouts aren't a big deal anymore. It is all about your launch angle and exit velocity and all that nonsense.
But do you prefer him in the 5-hole?
Sure.
I think it's a better fit for him, don't you?
Because he does have the capability. He was basically the entirety of the Braves offense in that playoff series against the Phillies, by the way. And by the way, playing the Phillies tomorrow night. Phillies have won 12 of 16. Look at their record. Ignore it. Right. Look at the fact they're 8 games back. Ignore it. They're pitching well, and they're hitting well. And Tom Glavine himself said just last week, Watch out for Philadelphia. They are capable of going on a run, and I don't think the Marlins are going anywhere either.
Right. The Marlins, and we'll see them after you see the Phillies. It's a real test. So this gets us back to how we started the segment. Your starting pitcher's got to do better than 5 1/3. You've got to be more effective. It wears me out. I love Strider. I don't love Strider as much as some people like Strider because of the things we just talked about. Pitching to contact, 17,000 foul balls because you said it, they're sitting dead red.
And plus, you got to remember, Spencer Strider's in his second year. His first full year as a starter. He's still learning.
Right. And I don't know if I want him as a closer, guys. Like I'm trying to cover enough. I'm trying to cover 5 starting pitching positions right now. I can't put Strider as my closer. I don't have confidence in Iglesias, but everyone tells me he's going to be fine.
Yeah, I saw you tweet about that.
Yeah.
Atlanta, we do have a closer problem, is what you said.
Well, I was texting with Rob, and I was like doing Jack Nicholson. Like, he makes me nervous. I don't like being made nervous by Iglesias. He doesn't have overpowering closer stuff. And then some guys came back at me and said, look, in today's major leagues, the only guy that had overpowering stuff is out. He's the Mets guy, Diaz, Timmy Trumpet. So who's the big time closer you'd covet right now? I don't know. Alex has always done an amazing job in tweaking the bullpen midseason.
I think he knows exactly what he's doing. There might be some minor moves, and who knows? Maybe he'll go out and try to get a good starting pitcher from a bad team. That could happen.
Chris, who is the guy you want from the White Sox?
Yeah, Lucas Giolito is the guy I want.
Yep.
He's a stud, and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent, so you could sign him.
Salary control, as in you don't take on any salary. So rent a player. And then the other side of this is the same Braves fans who sit there and go, you can't part with Pache and Waters. You got to give to get in this world. It's the same thing with the Hawks.
Isn't that funny? We did just fine by doing that.
Yes, you got to give to get. And your farm system, if it's as good as it is here with Atlanta, you replenish it because you got great scouting and they know what they're doing. But at some point, my attitude, and this is something Carl and I were talking about on, I think it was Thursday. To me, this is another. We talked about the window. We're talking NFL. There's a window for Buffalo. We're in this window. I don't want to go another 1 for 14 with the Braves in my lifetime. I want to see these guys win 2 out of 3 World Series, maybe 3 out of 4. Well, you've got the best lineup in the big leagues, 1 through 9. Only the Rays have got a better on-base percentage with slugging.
Well, I got to tell you, the way this team is constant, all the depth on this team, that lineup is so deep. And 7, 8, 9, you're getting production from there. You do have good starting pitching.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little erratic right now. You've got injuries. You got injuries to Kyle Wright and right now, Max Fried, he's throwing on flat ground, isn't he?
Yeah, but technically we all throw on flat ground.
We all throw on flat ground.
No, but this goes back to my concern with enough starting pitching because when I talk to Braves fans, they go, Mike, you're overreacting. You're playing radio. No, I don't play radio. I'm legitimately anxious about the starting pitching because you can't tell me when Fried and Wright are going to pitch again.
Yeah.
And
or how effective they'll be.
Right.
I mean, Kyle Wright, he's got a shoulder strain. I mean, that could...
Right, not to mention the Soroka thing. I was told by Braves, like, we all want that fairy tale ending with Soroka. That's still a major work in progress.
It's a major work in progress. I mean, you got to remember the guy didn't pitch for 2 years.
Right. But so what should my expectations be for Michael Soroka? I mean, he's going to contribute down the stretch here this year?
I would hope he'd be able to recapture it because he doesn't have an arm or shoulder issue. It's the Achilles, so it seems like he could get back to what he was. Remember, he was an all-star pitcher, and he was one of the more dominant pitchers in the National League before he got hurt.
Right. So we'll continue the conversation, guys. Grant is off today because the Braves are off, but we'll get you, again, some highlights of the weekend. We'll hear more of what Snicker had to say about his guys and the great power display that we saw. More tape measure home runs for everybody, Money Harris. And then... But this is a really tough stretch. So you're going to see the pitching hopefully respond because you talked about all the things we just covered. Morton's inconsistency, Strider, the inability sometimes to get the velocity where he needs it to be in the location.
That's not his problem, though.
The Belo's okay.
He's still averaging almost a strikeout and a half an inning. He's still very dominant.
Right.
Like I said, though, it's the slider. Lack of command on the strider. They can sit fastball. That's why you supplement. I think, and it's not that difficult to master a changeup.
It's the same thing with Iglesias. When that slider doesn't slide, it's friggin' batting practice.
Yep, Frisbee. The Frisbee slider. Cement mixer slider.